Natalie, a warm and outgoing people person, is surprised with a heartfelt farewell party from her neighbors, who've become family to her. She's thrilled to start a new chapter, having secured a job at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, and looks forward to meeting her new condo neighbors. Upon arriving in Pittsburgh, Natalie enthusiastically greets Mark, the building superintendent, who seems less than friendly since he's busy with work. On her way to her apartment, she meets Sylvia, the HOA head, who welcomes her, but lays down strict guidelines to follow. It seems it isn't going to be a cakewalk living in the condo after all. The next morning, Natalie calls the school to see if she can visit and meet her future co-workers, but she's 6 whole weeks early. With so much time to spare, she decides to explore the city. On her way out, she eagerly introduces herself to a few neighbors, but their distant interactions leave her feeling out of place. While walking, she stumbles upon a volunteer stand for Pittsburgh's annual Walk to End Alzheimer's. Seeing it as a chance to make friends while supporting a good cause, she signs up. She quickly bonds with Linda, who's leading the campaign, but their conversation is interrupted when Mark passes by. Vero, who's working the stand, tries to recruit him, but he dismisses the idea without a second thought. Natalie is shocked by Mark's dismissive attitude and chases after him to ask why he refused to sign up. Mark simply says it's not his fight and walks away, leaving her stunned. Later, she visits a local eatery and quickly bonds with Drea, the friendly owner. When Mark stops by to pick up his order, the two cross paths again. Curious about him, Natalie asks Drea, who assures her that Mark is a good guy beneath his tough exterior. Hearing this, Natalie gets the idea to host a party to bring her condo neighbors together. Excited, she designs a flyer and pins it to the building's announcement board before diving into party preparations. Unfortunately, the only person to knock on Natalie's door during her party is Mark, there to fix her leaky sink that's disturbing the apartment below. Disheartened by the lack of turnout, she wonders why the neighbors don't seem to get along. Mark explains that out of the building's 30 units, half keep to themselves and the other half don't get along. He adds that he stays out of everyone's business, and they do the same with his. Shocked, Natalie reflects on how different this is from her close-knit neighborhood back in Miami. Before Mark leaves, she insists he takes a container of food, giving him no chance to refuse. The next morning, Natalie spots Mark outside the building with his bike. She eagerly starts talking about the various souvenirs her neighbors in Miami have requested, but Mark doesn't seem interested. She tries to explain the joy of doing things for others, but Mark responds that being on call 24/7 leaves him with only his bike rides as his personal free time. On a call with Tobias, her former neighbor, Natalie admits the people in her new building aren't friendly. Tobias reminds her that she was the one who brought their Miami community together and encourages her to do the same in her condo. Later, Natalie encounters Mark and Mira, one of the tenants, and cheerfully introduces herself. However, the moment Mira hears she's staying on the 5th floor, she abruptly dismisses Natalie and walks away. Curious about the 5th floor's reputation, Natalie presses Mark for answers, but he refuses to get involved. Determined to unite the building, Natalie decides to take matters into her own hands, prompting Mark to wish her luck. She's really going to need it. The next day at the eatery, Natalie shares her failed party experience with Drea. Undeterred, she decides to try again. She sets up a table with a basket of muffins outside the building, hoping to connect with her neighbors. Unfortunately, no one shows interest. Frustrated, she vents to Mark and comes up with an idea to decorate the lobby for the fall season to create a welcoming space for everyone to gather and chat. Mark takes her to the storage room, and Natalie is stunned by the various decorations. While they're there, Hector, a tenant, stops by to remind Mark about the homeowners' meeting later that day. Seeing an opportunity, Natalie insists on attending and bringing snacks, despite Mark's warning. At the meeting, chaos quickly erupts as everyone argues back and forth. Natalie arrives with her snacks and tries to make a suggestion, but the moment they learn she's from the 5th floor, they dismiss her entirely and return to their bickering. Wonder what the deal is with the 5th floor. The next day at the eatery, Natalie discusses the long list of souvenirs she wants to get for her Miami neighbors but struggles since she doesn't know the city. Drea, always clever, convinces Mark, who's picking up his order, to take Natalie on a tour. Later, Mark is surprised to see that none of the items on the list are for Natalie. Well, it isn't even a surprise at this point. While handing out campaign flyers to local businesses, Mark shares that his dad was once the building's super, but is now retired. Natalie suddenly gets the idea to organize a leaf-peeping trip for the neighbors during the scheduled pest extermination of the building, hoping it'll bring them together. It's clear Natalie doesn't give up easily. Back at her apartment, Natalie quickly staples the leaf-peeping flyer to the bulletin board and tries to invite Sylvia to the event. However, Sylvia flatly declines before heading inside. The next day at the charity, Natalie opens up to Linda about her struggles. Linda shares that she used to be like Natalie, always putting others first, but has learned the importance of prioritizing herself too. While upstairs, Linda shows Natalie pictures of Alzheimer's patients, and Natalie is shocked to see Linda among them. Linda reveals it's a hereditary disease, and they're actively managing it. Natalie feels empathy for Linda, but is also inspired by her resilience. The next morning, after the exterminators arrive, Natalie feels disappointed that no one showed up for the leaf peeping. Not surprising, really. Mark, however, kindly offers to join her for the activity, which lifts her spirits. They ride bikes to the river, where the view of nature is breathtaking. Though Natalie's still bummed that no one else showed up, Mark advises her to focus less on others. She explains that she grew up feeling isolated and disconnected, which is why she's so determined to bring people together. Mark understands but still believes she should prioritize herself more. He suggests a deal. He'll help her broker peace in the condo if she promises to spend more time focusing on herself. Natalie sees it as a win-win and eagerly agrees. The next day, Mark takes Natalie to witness the ongoing dispute between Hector and Liz over Hector's loud music. Suddenly, Natalie gets an idea of how to solve the problem. It turns out, they've planned an outing to take Hector, Liz, and her kids to a painting session since Hector is an artist, and it's a great activity for the kids. Natalie tries to address their issues head-on, but Mark steps in to take control of the conversation, preventing another clash between Hector and Liz. His more subtle approach works unexpectedly well. Liz learns more about Hector, and they end up sharing their concerns with each other. Afterward, Mark takes Natalie out to spend some quiet time, encouraging her to let go and focus on herself instead of others. Natalie curiously asks about Mark's relationship status, but he admits he's never had a relationship that lasted. When he asks about hers, Natalie reveals that her intense focus on her ex was too much for him to handle. Mark suggests she find a balance, focusing some of that energy on herself, which brings a smile to her face. Later, Natalie gets a call from Linda, who vents about a team pulling out of the campaign. Natalie immediately offers to help recruit more people, but Linda insists she takes the time to unplug and suggests they talk about it the next day. Taking Linda's advice to heart, Natalie heads outside to read under the clear sky, finding inspiration in her surroundings. Guess she's starting to see the value in taking time off. Back at the building, Mark takes Natalie to overhear a dispute between Mira and Shanti over the washing machine. Together, they come up with a plan to resolve it. It turns out Shanti is a yoga instructor, and Mira takes yoga lessons regularly. They convince Mira to join Shanti's yoga class the next morning, where Natalie subtly brings up their issue. As they talk, they quickly reconcile after learning more about each other. And just like that, another dispute is resolved. Later, Natalie convinces Mark to join her at the charity, where he ends up volunteering to help Natalie recruit more team members. However, Linda advises Natalie not to overdo it and asks Mark to make sure she takes time for herself. Later, Mark invites Natalie to a cookout with his dad, Jimmy, and some close friends. Jimmy warmly welcomes her, and Natalie is surprised to see Drea there. Jimmy explains that he knew Drea's grandmother when she ran the eatery, making Drea practically family. Staying true to her nature, Natalie offers to help with the grill, but Jimmy insists she relax and enjoy herself, making Mark tease her about not knowing how to relax. Drea playfully teases Natalie about her closeness to Mark, but Natalie clarifies that they're too much the opposite of each other. They all have a blast playing rugby, with Natalie's team winning, which excites her. Later, as they wind down, Jimmy tells Mark that Natalie is special. However, Mark insists on keeping things professional, since he works in the building. Mark's past unprofessional behavior cost Jimmy his job at the building, and Mark is determined not to let that happen again. However, Jimmy reassures him, urging him to let go of the guilt. The story leaves Natalie feeling a bit sad. After bidding Jimmy goodnight, they get into the car to head back to the apartment. Natalie suddenly gets the idea to recruit the neighbors for the team Linda wants, but Mark doubts it'll work. However, knowing Natalie, she won't give up easily. The next day turns out to be a successful one for Natalie and Mark. They manage to get an air humidifier for Chuck, who's always sneezing, and create a resting spot for Sylvia's dog, making both Chuck and Sylvia happy. It's clear that Natalie and Mark make a great team. Later at the eatery, they order pies to celebrate their success with the neighbors. Mark even volunteers to help Drea with some work around the place, which surprises her. Drea admits that Natalie is good for Mark and ends up teasing them about their obvious chemistry. Afterward, Mark surprises Natalie with the newly decorated common room. He's managed to get the neighbors together for a small party, which pleasantly surprises her. He also unveils a chair he's made from different woods in the storage room. For Mark, the chair symbolizes the community coming together as a family, and everyone is touched by his speech. Natalie praises his hard work, and Mark suggests she follow through on recruiting the neighbors for the campaign now that they're united. However, Sylvia isn't at the party, so Mark and Natalie go to fix this. They manage to convince her to join the festivities, and Natalie pitches the campaign to the neighbors. To her surprise, Sylvia is the first to agree, followed by the rest of the neighbors. Mark is amazed by everything, and just then, Linda opens up about her feelings for him. Mark admits he likes her too, and the moment becomes charged with tension. Just as they lean in for a kiss, they're interrupted by a call from Linda. Natalie apologizes to Mark, explaining she has to head to the charity, but promises to return before the party ends. At the charity, Linda's Alzheimer's gets the better of her, and she forgets her own picture on the wall. This breaks Natalie's heart, and she gets very emotional. Linda reassures her, urging her not to feel bad since life is too short to focus on the wrong things. Back at the apartment, it seems the peace is short-lived. The neighbors are back to bickering, and Natalie is taken aback by the sudden shift. She tries to fix things, but nothing seems to work. Sylvia gives Mark an official warning, insisting he goes through HOA before making any decisions in the building to avoid repeating his father's mistakes. This leaves Mark devastated, and soon, everyone begins leaving one by one, calling off the campaign team. Natalie is confused by how things escalated and suggests they try to fix it, but Mark has had enough. He believes some things are just too broken to fix, and walks out, leaving Natalie feeling sad and teary-eyed. On the day of the Alzheimer's walk, Natalie apologizes to Linda for not being able to pull off the last-minute team, but Linda reassures her that she's already done enough. She encourages Natalie to relax and enjoy the moment. Natalie assures Linda she's always there for her whenever she needs anything, and Linda is touched by her kind-hearted spirit. At the eatery, Mark drowns his sorrows in pies and confides in Drea that he shouldn't have gotten involved with anyone in the building. However, Drea believes he can still care while maintaining professionalism, making it clear she's talking about Natalie. Back at the apartment, Mark is surprised to find Hector and Liz trying to fix the broken arm of the chair he made. He expresses his gratitude, but then gets an idea for something else they could fix together, piquing Liz and Hector's interest. At the Alzheimer's walk, Linda gives a heartfelt speech, thanking everyone for their support. She especially thanks Natalie and calls her up on stage to say a few words. Natalie cheerfully shares with the crowd that she's realized life is too short to not do the things that bring joy. Her community is right there with her, and she's decided to walk, make friends, and meet new people without letting anything hold her back. She's greatly surprised when Mark arrives, loudly asking to walk with her. Mark reveals that he's realized he wants to help, and that he only came to this realization because Natalie has changed him. Apparently, he's not the only one she's changed. He reveals the rest of the neighbors, making Natalie excited and touched. Linda is pleased by this and asks everyone to raise a colored flower for those they've lost to Alzheimer's, those who care for Alzheimer's patients, those battling the disease, and a white flower for the bright future to end Alzheimer's. The moment is heartwarming and touching as everyone begins the walk together. The neighbors are finally a team again, bonding with each other along the way. Natalie is overwhelmed by this, and Mark admits they make a great team. He leans in for a romantic kiss, making the moment even sweeter.